Hi, so my name's Sharn and I've recently been recruited as one of the parent ambassadors working with Mel. Um, the reason I sort of joined the team was to tell the story really about my daughter Joanna. She chose the level 6 design development engineering apprenticeship at Dyson over all of her offers at university, including Cambridge. And it's one of those stories, I think, that a lot of people ask why. Why would you turn down Cambridge for an apprenticeship? And so we just wanted really to share that story and to share the reasons that she chose the apprenticeship and her journey. She's currently in year 2 of a 4-year course. She she was keen to take the apprenticeship right from day one. She applied for a lot of different apprenticeships and, as I say, all of the 5 university places as well. And the course itself for her, it's broken down into 2 days a week is university. So it's a Warwick degree, design engineering degree. And she does 3 days at work, and that's at Malmesbury in Wiltshire. And the 3-day working week that she has there is a rotational 3-day week. So she has 3 placements each year. So that she'll have a electrical placement and then a mechanical placement and then a software placement in year 1. And then in year 2, it was slightly different. She's currently working in the innovation team and she's particularly enjoying that rotation at the moment. So in year 1 and 2, just as the degree is also modular. So the degree, she's done electrical modules, she's done mechanical modules, she's done maths, she's done a lot of different types of modules within the degree. And then in year 3 and 4, they get the choice in terms of specialising and looking at either software, robotics, or electrical or mechanical. And the same applies actually with Dyson in terms of their placements. In year 3 and 4, you get a lot more say about which department that you want to work in. So for her, it was very much about that choice of being able to sort of, not just do the academic learning, but also put that into practice from day 1 and therefore help her to narrow down what she wanted to do by the end of her degree. So in terms of how it works for her, because of this particular one that she chose at Dyson, in year 1, she actually lived on campus, which was fantastic. And from a parent's point of view, it was just incredible. When we went to visit the campus, honestly, the Dyson pods where they live, it's like a 5-star hotel. It was incredible. So, that was certainly, a real pull factor as well. And of course, they're living on campus. There's around about a student intake of 40 per year. So at least she has that cohort feel as well. And it's a 4-year course. So you've got around about 150, 160 undergraduates at any one time. And so it's quite helpful to have that. So she's got, a good student community. But then again, it is based in Malmesbury, which is in the middle of Wiltshire. It's a small town. And so by the end of year 1, she was really sort of craving that, sort of wider student experience. So now in year 2, she's living in the centre of Bristol and in a large house of 8, 6 boys, 2 girls. And she's certainly enjoying much more of that sort of typical student lifestyle. From the Dyson perspective, it's fantastic because she has the opportunity to, she drives from Bristol to Malmesbury. And it's around about 35 minutes. So she does that, and they tend to car share as well because there's plenty of them there. But then in addition to that, they do run a Dyson bus from Bristol. So it's okay if they don't drive. There's plenty of support there for them. And I think, sort of COVID has actually kind of helped the whole experience because there's been quite a lot of online learning, which has been quite helpful for her because it's not that full-on 5-day week. There's a little bit of flexibility, and usually there's a one full day of lectures and then one day which is much less, and so there's a lot more sort of active study time in that, because 3 full days of working sort of 8 till 5 on site, it's tough. It's not the easy option. It is a tough week. You are doing that full same degree as you would be doing if you were full-time at university. So it's tough. The course that she has though at Dyson is fantastic in terms of the amount of support that she gets. The amount of time off that she gets is incredible. I think it's 52 days holiday a year, on a starting salary of sort of a standard graduate starting salary. So from that perspective, she's sort of very fortunate. I think Mel is back.
So yeah, hopefully Sharn's done a little bit of an intro, and we'll be talking a bit more to Sharn about her experience and her daughter's experience as well. So I think we'll just kind of get started in there and just kind of kick off. So tonight we will be focusing on higher and degree apprenticeships, because we're going to be following kind of Sharn and her daughter Joanna's story as we kind of go along. I was going to share a few slides, but I think we'll just kind of get started and kind of get straight in there. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Sharn's role. So Sharn is here as a neaco Parent and Carer Ambassador. And so we have a small team of Parent Care Ambassadors based in Suffolk and in Norfolk. As you may know, neaco, we work across East Anglia. And the idea of the Parent and Care Ambassadors is that they have experience of supporting their young people into and through further and higher education. So they're there as a parent voice, and they may well attend online and in-person events. They generally help us shape any parent carer guides and resources. They might be part of interviews or presentations like this evening, and they're there to talk to other parents and carers. And their main role is to offer reassurance and support, share their experience and insight, continue that kind of impartial guidance that neaco supply, be part of that impartial guidance. So, impartial in the sense of that we're not biased and we don't push one pathway or the other. We like young people to explore all of their options. And they're also here to help us build parent and carer voice as part of our activity. So that's sharing their own voice, as well as kind of helping us access other parent and carer views, so to make sure that they feel heard. So tonight we are joined by Sharn, and so Sharn is one of our Parent and Care Ambassadors who has the most experience in higher and degree apprenticeships and just generally the apprenticeship route. So that's why we're kind of talking to her tonight, and she's going to offer the parent kind of perspective. So higher and degree apprenticeships, as you may know, they combine work with study, and as it says on the tin, a degree apprenticeship is still a degree. Sometimes it might take a bit longer than a traditional degree because there's a work and study kind of element. But generally, at the end of it, obviously your young person will come out with a degree as well. One of the benefits is often there's no university fees. So degree apprenticeships will be co-funded by the government and by the apprenticeship provider as well. And there's that opportunity there for your young person to gain a degree, but to do that with not just study, but also the practical work experience as well alongside. And just before we came in tonight, it was really interesting actually, Sharn. There's been a few, because it's National Apprenticeship Week, obviously this week, there's been a few blogs and interesting articles that have gone out this week. And something that one of our colleagues shared earlier is that as it stands, from the 750,000 young people who have set up their UCAS accounts in the last 6 months. So the UCAS account is obviously the account that young people set up when they're thinking about whether they're going to go to university or do a degree apprenticeship. So out of those 750,000 people, 342,000 of them have said they're interested in doing an apprenticeship and not just university. So that really shows that this, conversation is really important, and that we need to be kind of supporting young people and their parents and carers as well to understand the world of apprenticeships, because it can be really confusing, and it is confusing, and it's not always the pathway that is most explained, and it's not always the pathway that's best supported through your young person's school and college as well. It's really important why we're having these conversations tonight. So whoever you are on the call tonight, whoever's here, whether you're a parent, whether you're a young person, a carer, a grandparent, another family member, whoever you are, we're hoping that tonight's going to be really useful for you. Like Naomi says, pop your questions in the chat. I've got loads of questions for Sharn. I always have, because it's always fascinating to talk to her. But if you have any others, please do pop them in the chat. And we always say within these events, every question is accepted. Never feel that, you don't want to ask a question because it might have been covered before, or you think it's too simple, or you think that, someone else might not be, interested in that question. I can guarantee you someone will, and every question is accepted. So please do pop those questions in the chat. And so without further ado, I'm going to, basically tonight is about having a conversation with Sharn and getting a bit more insight from her experience and her daughter's experience. So I wasn't in here for the first 10 minutes, so I'm sure you've shared a bit of the journey. So Sharn, did you kind of cover the basics and what Joanna is sort of doing?
Yeah, so I've just really talked about, sort of the choice that she took, and I've talked a little bit about Dyson and the structure of the apprenticeship.
Brilliant, great. So that's bits done. That's great. So we can kind of crack on. So that's really great to kind of set the scene, and it gives us kind of like a bit of insight into kind of what Joanna's doing at the moment. So now I'm thinking that maybe we'll step back in time a little bit, and we'll have a bit of a look at how Joanna got into her degree apprenticeship. So it'd be really good to cover the application, generally the process you have to go through to applying for degree apprenticeships. Maybe we can have a bit of a discussion also about the offers that she received and the decision that she kind of had to make. I think we need to be honest here from the offset that higher and degree apprenticeships, especially degree apprenticeships, are competitive. So and also that the entry requirements and the application processes, they can really vary quite greatly. So first of all, you might have already covered this, but so we might be sort of going back over things, but how many degree apprenticeships did Joanna apply for, and how many did she actually receive offers from?
Yeah, so I was just talking a little bit about that. So, in terms of Joanna applied for 5 universities as the normal standard, UCAS application. And she was really fortunate. She got 5 offers, and so they were the sort of the top universities: Cambridge, Imperial, Warwick, Bath, Edinburgh. She smashed it on that, and Joanna is exceptional in terms of her academic ability, etc. And so it's very difficult, to have these conversations and think, come across as this complete proud parent moment, and she has all of these skills. But what was really interesting is, when we're looking at the degree apprenticeship side, is that, she almost had this expectation that she would be successful because, she met the academic requirements, and she'd got lots of experience, and she communicates well, and she hadn't really experienced that kind of failure before. But to go through this process of applying for the degree apprenticeships, I professionally knew that this was going to be tough and it was going to be difficult because I've worked in this arena, but we didn't realize quite how difficult it was going to be. And she applied for around about 10 to 12 in the end, and she got 3 offers. And that was a bit of a surprise, as I say, to her and to us to a point, because, as I say, she was one of those students, you know, to try and put her away from being my daughter. But as a student, you would kind of see through school, you know, there was not many times that she faced that kind of, you know, sort of those hurdles. So it was a really interesting process. It was a really difficult process. But again, because of her academic ability, she was applying for the absolute top cream of, you know, sort of apprenticeships. So it was always going to be a tough journey. That said, you know, there are some amazing opportunities out there, and year on year, it's getting better and better in terms of the opportunities that are there.
Brilliant. No, you're right, definitely. And so she applied for obviously multiple degree apprenticeships. She obviously had her top choices. When it came to the actual offers, did she receive any rejections from her top choices at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So as she was going through this process, the summer before that you make your, so the year 12 summer, she, at that point, even she was still, maths was her thing. She was always really, really strong at maths, and she was anticipating applying to university to study maths. But that summer, we talked about getting a little bit more experience to really define what she wanted to do. And she applied and was really successful at getting onto the BAE systems, so what was British Aerospace. They do an engineering taster week. Really difficult to get on, but I strongly encourage anybody who's got a, you know, sort of a young person that's interested in engineering to apply for this. It is open now to apply for. And she was successful, and she got a place on this. She was very excited. She went up to Wharton and spent a week up there. And she came back and described it as life-changing, and, you know, that was it. That's all she wanted to do. And they have an incredible degree apprenticeship program. They take a lot of degree apprenticeships and standard apprenticeships, all levels apprenticeships there, and it is a fabulous place to be. She felt that she'd got a really strong chance, obviously, of getting that apprenticeship, because not only had she been successful of attending the Taster Week, she'd actually got voted as Engineer of the Week. She got presented that award by the Chief Executive of BAE Systems, and she was absolutely on cloud nine when she got back. But also, as I say, that was it. That was the one she wanted. And she went through the process. She passed all of the initial testing. She went through that process, and she got an email saying that she'd been shortlisted for the assessment centres, which then got put on hold because of COVID. And then about April or May, so it was getting quite late into the timeline of everything. I think it was probably May. She then got completely out of the blue. She got an email saying that she'd been put on the reserve list. So she wasn't actually selected for the assessment centre. Well, she was absolutely gutted at this news, and, you know, devastated, because that was all the way through. That was her number one choice. So yes, during that, you know, sort of it became very clear that some of the others were, you know, equally, if not as good, and Dyson became her firm favourite, you know, sort of after that. But it was certainly, you know, sort of a big knock to her confidence.
I think dealing with rejection at any age is incredibly challenging, especially at such a young age, at such an important moment, you know, in their lives, really. Having to submit multiple applications, having all the kind of varying deadlines, and that kind of uncertainty is so tough. As a parent, like supporting her and being present kind of through that time, were there any kind of like qualities you noticed in her that developed, or any kind of changes in her during that application process?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, sort of the key was resilience, really. I mean, she really grew as a person through the whole thing. She astounded me the way she sort of bounced back from that news, and you know, sort of the next morning I was asking her how she was feeling, and she'd applied for you know, sort of a handful more apprenticeships. So she'd sort of widened her search. She started looking at data science apprenticeships as well, software engineering. It wasn't just then the aerospace engineering ones that she initially had shortlisted herself to. So yeah, it was a really interesting time. There was lots of other things that happened through that process as well, because I think what we learned was that the process for applying for degree apprenticeships varies. Every single one is different, and some of the things that she picked up were things like, you know, just the efficiency of the way she was applying. So, you know, there were some commonalities. So things like quite often, I mean, it's like you are applying for a job. So they are interested in what you've done and what experiences you've got. They're not just interested in your academic ability. It's very much about, you know, sort of what have you done over and above school. And so, you know, quite often the questions are quite similar. When have you worked in a team? Or you know, when have you worked with customers, or when have you applied in a workplace, you know, sort of something technical, a technical solution. And so, you know, what she was doing was she was getting a bank of these answers, and she was developing that sort of you know, sort of answer bank really, so that when she got you know, sort of an application, she was able to tailor, you know, sort of pick up and, you know, sort of use those. And again, these are all business skills, and so there was quite a lot of things that she picked up. You know, there's a lot of organisational skills, you know, because obviously a number of different deadlines. You know, sort of quite often, if you did get shortlisted, you might get sent a link to do some testing, for example, some online testing, and that had to be done by a certain date. And you're juggling this with your schoolwork and your, you know, sort of your, you know, year 13, you're getting ready for your exams, and you've got, you know, all of this coursework, etc. as well. So there was a lot to do through the process, and you know, you could obviously easily lose heart. So I did have to feel like I was a little bit on top of her, saying, oh, you know, what's this one? What's happening next? You know, sort of, what was the deadline for that again? You know, asking lots of questions rather than sort of getting critical.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's about resilience, but also that change, but also those development of like organizational skills and those kind of business skills, you know, stuff that's really important in life. So we touched a little bit on it there, I guess, about the process of degree apprenticeships. But what for you during this experience, what did you find were the key differences between university applications and degree apprenticeship applications in terms of the process and also the timeline?
I think that's the critical part really, was mainly the timeline, but also the support that's available. So I think, you know, with you know, applying for university, the schools are so set up and are so experienced and so able to support, you know, your young person, and you know, they've got that all in place in that, you know, they'll be looking for a first draft of, you know, the application, and then they'll help you with, you know, sort of you know, several iterations of that, and providing you feedback, and you know, reminding you of the deadlines and all of those things. So that's kind of a clear process, and whilst, you know, it was important to do a lot of research in terms of determining which universities she wanted to apply for, it was, you know, sort of there was that clear timeline and structure to it. With the degree apprenticeships, it was entirely different, and so you were looking from September right through to the next September. New degree apprenticeships come online all the time, so you know, there's no timeline, there's no set timeline, there's no one place to find out about them, and that became really tricky and time consuming, hugely time consuming, because I found myself quite late at night, I'd be, you know, sort of flicking through all of the websites that I'd found, and you know, I'd be searching for things and pinging her, you know, sort of if I found something that she might find useful. And so I think that's one thing that you can do to try and take some of the pressure off and try and support is, you know, if you have narrowed it down, or if they have narrowed down what they want to do, there is that, you know, sort of that amount of research is huge with the degree apprenticeships. And as I say, that support isn't there in the same way. Some schools, of course, are fantastic with it. Others perhaps haven't caught up yet. But in terms of the process, sort of some just required a CV, some required a full-on application form that was very similar to the UCAS application. Some then required, lots of online testing. Some did quite a lot actually because of COVID, did an initial telephone screen. Obviously like a Zoom call or Teams call or whatever. Some of the interviews then were online because of COVID. Some did full-on assessment centres. It was just completely random.
God, a lot of hard work as well. Real lot of hard work for you and especially for Joanna. And during that time, I'm assuming, with all the pressure and everything that was going on and making those decisions, you and Joanna would have had, conversations really about what route she wanted to choose. She was obviously weighing up that decision between university and a degree apprenticeship. Do you remember any kind of key conversations you had, and what did you talk about during that time?
I think it was a tough decision for her, in terms of sort of working it all through. There was lots of things that we talked about, and obviously I think with any young person going to university, one of the fundamental things of course is the money, in terms of working out what you can afford, how you can afford it, how it works, how the loan system works, all the finance, all of that. So we were going through all of that process with the university side, and then of course we were looking at the salaries on offer as well with the degree apprenticeships. She, being a mathematician, she'd calculated exactly what she would earn over a period of the 4-year course and how much potential debt she would be in, sort of if she went to university, and she was looking at how would she claw that back and at what point do you think she would, so she was looking at all of the probabilities and such like, and that's I assume the whole sort of math student side of it. And that was, a lot of her initial thinking, and she wanted to take pressure off us, all of those kind of things. So I had to steer her away from that because I didn't want this to be a financial decision. I wanted it to be the decision that was in her best interests and really the decision that she would enjoy the most. 4 years is a long time in a young person's life. That 18 to 22 is a huge turning point, in her life. And I wanted it to be, where she would, sort of flourish most, where she would be happiest. So we talked a lot about the lifestyle that each of the options that she, because again, one of our key sort of terminology became it's not an option until it's an offer. And we continued to laugh about that, but also, in order to create options, you have to get lots of offers on the table. So until they were actual offers, we didn't really debate them too far. But we did talk, once she had those options on the table, we talked quite a lot about comparing those options and what kind of lifestyle they would give her, down to what does a normal week look like, where would you see yourself being, who would your cohort be, who would your peers be, so what kind of social life would you have with each option, where would you be living, how much independent study time, would you have, what do you like most? Do you like being with people, putting things into practice, or do you actually like that research, that individual research? So it was lots and lots of different conversations.
That's brilliant. And so there would have been obviously a moment when Joanna made that final decision. Was there anything in particular that made her, how did she arrive to that decision to go into a degree apprenticeship and not go to uni?
Do you know, it's really interesting that the whole process with Dyson was so clear, and so it was just immaculately organised, everything about it. And there was a decision day, and I knew, just working up to that decision day, I knew that if she was offered that was the one that she would go with, just because of her demeanour over the days running up to that decision day and how nervous she was about it. And the day she got that decision, she was just, just the excitement, it was just, it was absolutely amazing to see. It was really emotional actually the whole day. She asked us to, sort of open the bottle of champagne. It was just, she knew from the moment she got that offer, she knew. And I think there was a lot riding on it, but I think the whole support process from start to finish, that was where she felt most comfortable. That was where she felt mostly her, that she was, she was going to thrive.
And so we've spoken a lot about Joanna, we've spoken about the application process, how she felt about it. But as a parent, kind of how did you personally find the experience? What feelings came up for you, throughout that experience?
I think at the end of the day, as a parent, you just want your young person to make the right choice for them, and you want them to feel happy and comfortable with whatever they're doing next. I think some of the difficulties that we had, some of the barriers we had was COVID. So we had spent, sort of 24/7 inside together for a very long time. And it was quite interesting to see and to hear her talking about what those next steps were going to look like, particularly when, with Dyson, she hadn't even been on their site because, it was completely locked down. And so, one of the first things we did was we booked up a girls' weekend. We went down there, we had a look around, and, we actually kind of made it an exciting thing to do, sort of that taking that next step, etc. And because I could see how much she wanted to do it and how excited by it she was, and actually I just felt so privileged that I was able to share that part of the journey with her, and that those memories that we were creating together were, were just really special times. So I actually felt really pleased when she went, although I missed her terribly and all of the rest of it. I felt like she was so ready for it, and we'd done everything that we could to prepare for it. And I think the process in terms of all of the applications that she'd made, I think had helped her get really ready for it.
That's brilliant. It's really nice to hear about how pleased you were and how excited you were for her as well, and on that next step of her journey. And so thinking about your experience then, is there any key advice or kind of guidance you would offer other parents and carers, in this situation to support their young people to apply for degree apprenticeships?
Yeah, and I think, I know how fortunate I was with Joanna in that she was probably the model student, and she was, sort of very easy to work with through this whole process. And I'm really well aware I do have, another child, and I've worked with this age group, and I continue to work with this age group. And so I do understand that, every student is not like that. And, in terms of, sort of the advice that, I've tended to always give is really make sure that you just look at both options and try to get your young person on board with looking at both options. And the school that Joanna went to were fantastic with this, and they really, sort of strongly encouraged students to dual apply. And that's the right time of year to do, to be looking as well. So, so if you are a parent of, sort of a year 13 student, right now is perfect timing. So the UCAS applications have just gone in, and now there's so many degree apprenticeships out there, and not necessarily degree. It doesn't have to be degree level. Some of the other apprenticeships are incredible, and some of the local apprenticeships are, there's so many really good, sort of, level 3, level 4, whatever. Really strong apprenticeships, which might be the right option for them, even if they're adamant right now that it's not, and that they're going to university. But one thing I've really noticed is just how much they change in that last year. They really, sort of, they change. And, as I say, if Joanna's story is anything to go by, she always said right up until the summer of year 12 that her dream was to study maths at Cambridge, and that was it. And she wasn't. And then that summer, all of those, she actually got lots of experience, and that's another thing I'd really strongly advocate. If if the more experience they can get, then more it will help them to understand what they want to do longer term. Because that choice of going to university and spending 3 or 4 years there, do they really know enough about that subject matter and that subject? And Joanna's had friends that have gone and studied maths that have then changed, and they've lost a year because now they're studying business, or now they're studying software engineering or whatever, because they perhaps haven't gone through that in enough detail. So that's what I would really encourage, that that year 12 summer, that year 13, first 6 months of year 13, really try to have those conversations, and really ask why do they want to study history or maths or art or whatever it is. Why do they want to study it, and where do they think they want to go beyond university? So that was a big thing, certainly with Joanna, was if it was Cambridge and maths, where does that lead you and what do you want from it? So do you see yourself in industry? Do you see yourself in commerce? Or do you see yourself in education, in research? Or and lots of people can't answer that, and I absolutely know that. But by thinking through where that next step is potentially going to lead you, I think can help with just clarifying that it is the right choice right now.
Definitely. And you're right. And I think the apprenticeship opportunities are only gaining momentum, all the time, locally and nationally. And something we've had conversations about before is quite often there are quite a lot of myths around kind of apprenticeships as well. And I think there's a lack of understanding for young people, for schools, for parents and carers, for everyone. And a myth that I've heard, and I know you've probably heard it as well, is quite often that with higher degree apprenticeships, the general view is that they can limit your choices and options for future careers compared to a university degree. And I know you've heard parents say this in your own sphere, and we've had that kind of view said to us. What is your response to that view that higher degree apprenticeships limits your choices compared to a uni?
I think it is the biggest myth, and again, if I can reflect on Joanna's journey and her thoughts on that, because her peers said the same things, and some of the teaching staff said the same things. Are you concerned that's something that you'll be doing? I mean, again, I appreciate with Dyson, she's got an amazing support network there, but I think one of the things that you will get with a degree apprenticeship is you don't just get your academic advisor through the university. You also get your apprenticeship advisor through the company. So for Joanna's situation, she's got a guaranteed job at the end of her degree if she wishes to take that with Dyson. However, that apprenticeship advisor is independent, and they provide sort of advice and guidance and about what you might want to do beyond the apprenticeship. Now, in this case, it is a design engineering degree. She could take that anywhere. She could go anywhere with it. But Joanna as well has started, even in year 2, she started to say, do you know what, I'm not convinced it is going to be an engineering, sort of outcome. Perhaps I do want to go back to maths. Perhaps I do want to look at business or commerce. And so she's had that conversation with her apprenticeship advisor. And with their encouragement, she's applied for Spring Week. And within that, she's actually going to Pricewaterhouse. And doing a few days there in investment banking. And there's a girl in the year above that did something very similar last year and has a graduate offer on the table for investment banking. So that's obviously their experience, and yes, it's sort of that they're sort of one-off examples. But I would always come back to, okay, if you study business, or if you study art or history or whatever, are you narrowing your options because you've studied that? And Joanna comes back to sort of the fact that after 4 years, not only will she have sort of a Russell Group degree, but she will also have 4 years worth of work experience. And she said, regardless of whether it's directly relevant to what I want to do, or where I want to go, surely I will be more employable wherever I go, because I've got 4 years experience within a huge organisation. So that's her take on it. Obviously, you can generalise in whichever way. You could argue that you're narrowing your options, but I think have a look at all of the potential options and talk to students that are going through it at the moment.
I think that's a really key piece of advice that you've offered there, Sharn, as well at the end, is talk to students from both sides, from university and higher and degree apprenticeships, and get their inside knowledge and how they feel as well. That's a really key piece of advice. So I've just seen that Naomi's popping a few links in the chat as well for everyone, and these are some great websites where you can start doing your research with your young person about the degree apprenticeships that are available out there. Again, as we mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, do pop them in the chat. We've got about 15 minutes kind of left. And it is National Apprenticeship Week this week, and so across our neaco channels we're going to be sharing even more insight from Sharn. So if you are on Twitter, do follow the hashtag that Naomi's just popped in the chat. I've captured some amazing hints and tips from Sharn that we're sharing across our neaco channels, and I think it's in conversations that Sharn and I have had previously, is that it's really important to do the research and to find out as much information as possible as a parent or carer as well as a young person, because as we've seen and we've spoken about this evening, there isn't always necessarily as much support from schools or colleges in kind of exploring the apprenticeship route. So I think it's really key that home learning element, with your young person is definitely key. We had a couple of questions kind of pre-submitted this evening, and as Naomi's also put in the chat, if you've got any questions after the event and you think, I wish I would have asked that, or you think of something afterwards, then please do email me. If they're questions for Sharn, I can pass them on to her as well, and we can obviously provide the answers based on Sharn's experience, or any information or resources that we can kind of forward on to you that would be useful to support your young person. So I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the pre-submitted questions that we got through. And one of the key things I think is about that transition kind of period. So with anything, if you're moving away or not even moving away, actually, even if you're staying in the same location as a young person, but you're taking that leap into higher education. So whether that's going to uni or whether that's doing a degree apprenticeship, that's a massive leap. There's big kind of changes and challenges that come with that. Were there any kind of, so the question that's come in through the pre-submitted questions is, were there any kind of challenges or anything that you and or Joanna had to face during that time, and kind of how did you then, I'll add a question onto that, how did you kind of support that transition? So that key period of actually going into a degree apprenticeship, moving away from home, and all of the kind of, all of the stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, I think one of the things, so when we first sort of looking at those kind of degree apprenticeship offers or opportunities that were out there, I think one of the things is narrow down, sort of what you're looking for in terms of, lifestyle choice. So, Joanna was really keen. She wanted to move away. She wanted to move somewhere. And she wanted that, sort of student experience, etc. So some of the degree apprenticeships she applied for, they had the right degree, the aerospace engineering that was her, sort of number one preferred option. But actually, sort of Airbus was one that she got the offer, but it was based in Chester, and the majority of the other apprentices were all coming from Chester or that location, so they were all going to be living from home, and she weighed that up, but decided against it. And I think you know, it's that's part of that research, isn't it, to be certain that they're going to be comfortable. And you know, are you looking for a cohort? Are you looking for, you know, the student experience? You know, that independence of living away, or you know, sort of, are you, you know, sort of comfortable with staying at home? So there's so many different things to look at when you go through. And I think, you know, she was really clear about what she wanted to do. She grew so much within that last 18 months with regard to independence. And so, as I said, you know, she was really ready. So there wasn't much I needed to do with her. My son, you know, was a completely different story. He went to university in America, and that transition, you know, I thought as a parent that was, you know, sort of so much harder, because, you know, what a thing to do at 18 to go to university in a different country, didn't know a single person. You know, we, you know, sort of much less independent. And so we were doing a lot of, you know, sort of trying to understand, you know, sort of where the support points were, you know, sort of, and organising things for him. And I think I learned a lot through that process that I needed to, I should have helped prepare him better in terms of, you know, developing his independence. And I think she probably benefited a lot from my reflections on how I dealt with it the first time around.
That's brilliant. That's great. And it's so interesting to have those completely different experiences as well between your sort of young people. And that's a great story that we can kind of pick up another time as well, and exploring kind of you know, university and going to university, you know, abroad in a different country. So that's kind of really interesting. I'm kind of just sort of checking on time at the moment, but I think it would be good to kind of end this evening on a bit of advice, and sort of how parents and carers can continue to support their young people. So based on your experience then, is there one piece of kind of key advice that you would like to leave parents and carers with this morning, within that kind of environment of supporting their young person to kind of apply and make decisions? What's that one key thing that you'd like to say to parents and carers?
I think, as I say, really, it's that range of choice that's out there now. There's so much there, and I think it's a bit overwhelming for, you know, sort of students at, you know, sort of 17, 18. It's a bit overwhelming as a parent to look through it all and think, you know, sort of how, you know, sort of what, you know, what are the best things, you know, where do I look, what do I do, you know, is this the right thing? And I think, you know, one of the key things that I learned as I started to go through this process is that, you know, you don't learn too much just from, you know, sort of some of the information in an advert, and so you have to look so far beyond it. And I think, you know, I described it to you before as, you know, it's almost like peeling this onion, because, you know, as you go through it layer by layer, or you know, through each of the processes, and find out more. And certainly for Joanna, you know, Dyson became her favourite option as she got further and further into the process and learned more and more and more about, you know, sort of what the Dyson experience was all about. But we didn't know that, you know, and it wasn't something that, you know, we stumbled across it. You know, we were looking at all sorts of different options. And so, you know, I guess my one thing that I would really want to leave out there is, you know, research widely, and just don't narrow down those options too quickly. Because again, as I say, Joanna was only ever really interested in maths, and found through, you know, sort of just being open to experiences by applying for that engineering course, that something actually just completely light bulb moment. And, you know, and so the research that I did, you know, some of the best degree apprenticeships out there are in the construction industry. And I didn't know anything about the construction industry, but when I started to look, there's some really exciting roles and really interesting, you know, sort of degree apprenticeships that you can go to. and some big employers. And it's, I guess, once you start doing those research, you start to find all sorts of things that perhaps you wouldn't have considered, and your young person won't have considered. You might say, oh, construction, and they'll be like, oh no, I'm not interested in building, I don't want to be a bricklayer or whatever. But actually there's so much in there, sort of even agriculture, some of the technology now, is mind-blowing, and just all of these careers and all of these sort of different routes forward are things that we didn't know anything about, because sort of things have moved on so much just even within the last 5 years. So I guess that complete open-mindedness is the way forward, I think.
That's a great piece of advice to end on, that open-mindedness, doing your research, but just always being open-minded to what the opportunities that are out there. And you're right, things have changed so much in the last 5 years. Things have changed since Joanna's started her degree apprenticeships, and they'll keep changing. And hopefully, based on the stats that I sort of read out earlier, hopefully people are realizing this and realizing the opportunities out there for degree apprenticeships, and exploring those a bit more, and exploring those through UCAS as well, and weighing up those two options and seeing. I really love what you said earlier about the lifestyle choice as well. I think that's really key, and weighing up what lifestyle you want, and what university and degree apprenticeships could, how they could support that lifestyle that you're looking for. It's been really great, and it's been an amazing insight, always is. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. If you do have any questions afterwards, please do email me. And so Naomi might have sort of introduced us kind of a bit at the beginning when I was lost in cyberspace. But myself and Naomi are both higher education and parent carer champions. So a lot of what we do focuses on parents and carers. So we want to hear your views and opinions as well. We also really want to hear what you need, what information you need, what would be most useful for you to help support your young people to make the right decision for them. So if you do want to email me as well about this evening, if you've got any feedback, any comments, or to email also about any other information you'd like, or any ways that we could change the event, or we could do things differently, anything that we can kind of address through events like this, we'd really love to hear from you. It'd be incredibly useful. As I said at the beginning, part of what we're doing with the Parent and Care Ambassadors, and generally kind of our parent engagement, is all about listening to you, figuring out what you need, what you want to hear about, and then creating stuff that's responsive to that. So please do get in touch if you have any comments or feedback. That would be really useful.